Hello and welcome to the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative podcast. My name is Rim. I'm an artist, a certified life coach and an NLP practitioner, and the creator of the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative retreats. Passionate about celebrating joy and beauty in the everyday, especially when things are falling apart, I'm insatiably curious about human nature, and I look into the world with reverence, awe, and a sense of wonder. Tune in for stories exploring healing through creativity, art, embracing sensitivity, and navigating the subconscious mind. I'll talk about the struggles that highly sensitive and creative people face, and share my experiences, insights, and favorite tools along the way. I'm here to empower you to turn what we often deem to be a curse into your biggest gift. I believe that the more we create together, the more we heal the world. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative podcast. I'm so happy and grateful for you tuning in. Today is a special episode for me because my guest, Geoff Hinsley, was my mentor and first coach ever. He helped me through a very difficult time, navigating a toxic work environment and general overwhelm and feeling stuck. That was back in 2019 till 2021, just before and during COVID. So I know it was a crazy time for almost everyone. And anyway, thanks to our sessions, I became more self-confident and realized that there was so much more to my purpose than working in fashion, although, as I shared many times, this was my childhood dream, so I had kind of been obsessed about that, and I never really considered other paths, but everything changed at that moment. And it's actually because of our sessions together that I began nurturing the idea to become a coach. And funnily enough, we found out that we both HSPs, also none of us knew it back then. But that can explain why I felt so understood by him. If Geoff Hinsley had a life theme, he would say it would be about wonder, both in the sense of being in awe of life and surroundings. The good stuff anyway. And as in the question, I wonder how that works. Of course, leading from that, how can I make it work better? Or can I invent something that works well? All this involves asking a lot of questions, being open with curiosity, and if possible, minimal judgment. As a leader in his engineering company, Geoff approached that in the same way. Not autocratic, more, let's find a way. Again, this involved asking questions in an empowering way. He found himself being upset with direct and aggressive challenges or environment. Sometimes that made him feel sick. He prefers a more harmonized way, but still achieving well, perhaps better, certainly more healthy. Geoff found out this is a key to creating a good coaching environment. All this led him to his great preference, working collaboratively, which he found works really well for highly sensitive people and others around them. So I really think that you will resonate with this. I definitely do. I've always found that collaborative work is much better for my health, for my sanity, for my energy, for my creativity, and the results are always better. So in this episode, we talk more about this topic and also about something that I find very, very interesting and really important for creative people. It's this energy, this balancing feminine and masculine energy, which is so important in order to really nurture our creativity and make it glow and flow and expand around us in a positive and constructive way. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hey, Jeff, I'm so happy to have you in the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Rim. Hi, great to see you.
It's good to see you. I think it's funny because you used to be my mentor a few years ago, and it's so nice to meet you again here and have another conversation.
Yes, I'm slightly nervous that you're going to be asking the questions now, and it used to be me asking them in the coaching environment.
This is true, but if we didn't have this conversation and this coaching, maybe I wouldn't be here doing my podcast. Who knows? I learned a lot from working with you. It was really good.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. That's always lovely to hear. Thank you.
And it's funny because at that time we didn't know we were both HSP, and now we found out we are. But I think it makes sense that a conversation, like I could feel you understood what I was going through, when many coaches don't, or like at that time I remember I was feeling I was a bit it was a bit distressful working in fashion, in living in Shanghai, a busy city. And I was feeling a little bit, like not a little bit, that's another statement, but very, 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 very overwhelmed.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, can we start by you telling me a bit about yourself? Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Well, I'm I'm British, and I grew up in what they call the home counties. I was actually spent the first 5 years of my life in in the south of England, um, in a little sort of a village school that I remember and loved, and then I got wrenched out of that into more of a sort of London or North London environment, where I spent the rest of my childhood and teenage years, and so I've lived pretty much in England all the time, apart from 5 months or so a few years ago in a jungle in Costa Rica. But that's another story.
Oh, I didn't know about that. No, I think I will ask you some question about this later. A
Okay.
jungle in Costa Rica. Hmm. And do you know your main astrological signs and your human design?
Yes, I do. I'm Libran, and I am my human design is I'm a projector. And interestingly, I was introduced to human design completely out of the blue, and I was recommended to go and talk to a guy who was a sort of guru in his field years ago, and he sat me down, and then he just without even talking to me hardly. He just told me all about who I was, and I thought, "Why is he?" And I stopped. I said, "Where are you getting from this? Is this have you are you a CIA agent, and have you got a file on me or something? Because what you're telling me is so accurate, and you're telling me about what might have happened in the past and how I am and everything." He said, "Oh no, I've just looked at your human design, and yeah, as it happens, it's very similar to mine." And I didn't think much of that until afterwards when I got the book on it, because I was like intrigued by now. And there's sort of 75,000 or 77,000 or whatever the number is of different potential combinations. So to meet somebody who's quite similar is is quite unusual. But yeah, so that's how I found
It
out
is,
about human
but
design.
how
And
did you know? Did did
oh,
did he
he'd
ask
asked
your date of
he'd asked for
birth?
my. Yeah, no, I had to kind of book to go and see this guy, and he in the booking he said, you know, where were you born, what time were you born, um, and basically that, and I didn't really think much of it, but of course he'd use that to get my human design, um, you know, and the funny
Okay.
thing was that he was referring to, he got it on his phone, so he was telling my life, and then he was looking and going, oh, and you'll find this and that happens, and you people will treat you like this, and you find this stressful, and that this that and the other. And I going, oh, you know, when you know, and I thought was on the phone to some secret service people who had a file on me or something. But no, it was So, having been sort of fairly skeptical of astrology and these sort of, these tests and things, it was really quite a shock and quite an eye opener that how accurate it was. So that's why I got the book and read about it.
Are you less skeptical now?
Yes, and I've kind of always known all my life that there's something going on behind the scenes, and whether you call that God or divine intervention or whatever it is. I mean, I wouldn't say I was particularly religious, but I have a sense that there's some weird stuff going on that we just don't know about, and so that might be just part of whatever that is.
Yes, definitely. I agree. I think actually all these modalities, human design, astrology, or other things, they are just like different languages to explain or to explain the same things.
Yeah.
And some people relate to some modalities or some languages more than others. It depends of the way they think and like to understand things.
Yeah, yes, I think that's right. Although so far I haven't been I see some people who are kind of just focus their entire lives on it, having discovered it. And I don't think I don't think I've got the attention span to really do that. Although having said that, I've put a lot of attention onto a leadership model that I've been co-developing, but we'll maybe talk a bit more about that later on.
Yes, we will. Yes. But about the human design thing and the fact that you're a projector, I was just telling you before that it makes total sense because I'm a generator, and supposedly projectors are great guides for generators. Because generators have this life force energy, which is great, and they can benefit others around them as well. But sometimes they do benefit from the guidance of the projector. The projector is the one who can see a little bit more, like a bit further away, and can guide the generator's energy. So it's a great combination.
Yes, yeah, and I see generators or people I now know to be generators who've got tons of energy and great focus and drive, and they blast through and they get things done, and they create podcasts, for example, and then I think, oh, I wish I could do all that, and then, or there's a mystery of how they do it, but you're quite right. It's that when I sit down and talk to them and listen to them, we come up with all sorts of there's some other energy that comes out, and I find that sometimes, whereas I might not create it, we might have created a new concept together by by bouncing ideas off each other, and or whatever happens.
Yes, that's the yeah, it's sort of alchemy. But tell me, you could definitely have a podcast. You don't need to do it. I mean, there's no there's not one way to have a podcast. I know many projectors who have a podcast.
Well, yes, I mean, maybe it was just a random example, but yeah, I mean, maybe I will one day.
What I mean is projectors also get things done. They just need to quit the idea of achieving every day. It's not about doing, bam, 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 bam. I think it's a more of having a more flowy rhythm, taking
Yeah,
more rest or delegating more. From what I understand, projectors, it's good for them to learn to they need to have people to work for them.
absolutely.
That
Yes,
would be the best. And then
having staff
you
is
would
an
be
ambition,
there as the
obviously.
guide telling, oh, you could do it a bit more like this. I think this could be more interesting like that. And then then you can have some generators doing it for you.
Yes. Well, I did run a small engineering company years ago with, we had 4 or 5 of us in it, and kind of that, in hindsight, that was my style. I mean, I've worked for people who are sorry, do this, do this, do this, and no, much more of I think, a kind of collaborative, and it's got to be fun as well. And sometimes I think we can lose the element of fun if you're, and hence some of the creative edge if it's really push, push, push. I mean, equally you can go too far the other way and not get anything done at all. But yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's interesting. I read an article a few weeks ago by Dr. Elaine Aron, the doctor who coined the term highly sensitive people, and she was saying that she noted that highly sensitive people tend to be naturally collaborative. They love it. Like they really thrive. Like their goal is to I don't remember the term that she used, but it was all about being happy when everybody find their own happiness or contentment or satisfaction from the interaction. It's not me. They are not at all in the mode of me against you. It's me with you, you with me together. We will achieve more. We can. So it's like a natural instinct for the highly sensitive person.
I think that's absolutely right. Yes, looking back over my career, I think all the best highlights are for me when I worked in a collaboration, and all the worst moments were when those being expected to create and deliver something entirely for somebody else's benefit, and that other person was not going to be at all thankful or or in some cases even you want to pay the bill, but it's that. But working with the guys and with clients who I really enjoyed working with, on a completely collaborative basis, absolutely great. We create way more successfully than we could have imagined in many cases.
Totally. And also, those atmosphere at work when it's one colleague against the other, there's this kind of competition, and it's like, oh, I'm not sharing, it's my day. It feels really stressful.
I remember,
counterproductive.
Yeah, I remember way back, and I remember the moment when guy who I didn't know very well had some sort of chat in an office, and I guess I was maybe 19, something like that, and working in a big factory, and I met this guy in this office, and he said, "Oh yeah, my policy is about I have to get them before they get me." So what do you mean by that? He said, "Well, I know that they're just going to try and get me or take credit for something that I did, or put me down, or make me wrong in some way. So I make sure that I do that to them first." And I thought, well, that's a very that's just going to cause kind of a complete negative feedback loop somehow. And yeah, actually, we do see we'd see people who kind of just do that. And I don't think that's productive. And I remember it, very clearly, and feeling very, wow, why would you do that? And then, of course, you start looking around, and then and the problem is that I think once that starts, you everyone ends up being defensive and also on the offensive as well. So you've got these extremes of behavior that are not conducive to either creativity or happiness generally. Unless, of course, you derive some sort of perverted pleasure out of being unhappy.
Yes, and then in a larger scale, we get wars.
Yeah. So I'm very, very pro harmony and harmonious working environments, and harmonious and honest and truthful relationships, and yeah, that's what I'd like to aspire to.
That's your Libran side.
Ah,
That's also
yes,
your Libran side speaking. Libra like harmony, they don't like conflicts, do they?
yes. Yeah, and I suppose the other thing I remember about realizing that somebody once said, oh, you're the Libra, and yes, you're the scales, so you're always in balance. And I thought, no, mostly scales are just all right. They're always moving. There's always a swing from one to another. You very rarely see a scale that's completely stationary. Not those sort of balanced ones anyway, unless you put a lot of effort into getting exactly the right weight. Um, so I think
That's what I
Librans have
was
the
gonna say. I was gonna say this idea of always being in balance does imply, like, just when you said that, I was feeling stressed. I felt like this this notion of having to control the balance so that it stays always like this, and it feels like it's like it's trying to control the outcome and kind of being very rigid, which is weird because life is not like, how can you, because you can't be always in balance because life is a bit crazy sometimes.
yeah
So it's even if you try, then it will be like this, and then what do? So you have to keep running, like it seems not unnatural. That's what I mean, to always
yeah
be in balance. It
that's
feels
right.
like lack of trust, and yeah.
Yeah, and actually, what I realised with that was that, oh well, I'm never going to be in balance. So actually, it's better to go with the gentle flow of this sort of, so sometimes it's like this, sometimes like that, and I think that obviously if it gets extreme, then that's upsetting. But just to be in a more accepting um, environment, and that I can think that with the engineering work I used to do, if we came up to a problem or something went wrong, and really that the lots of, I mean, things go wrong more in engineering than they go right. It's just that when they get to the market, they've usually gone, been made right mostly. And so it's kind of, it's like instead of really panicking and going absolutely crazy and mad and starting blaming people for idiot mistakes or whatever, um, then you just go, okay, all right, well, let's see if we can find a better way, and then you do usually.
Yeah, there's a big similarity with creativity. It is creative. It's having a creative mindset, or like an experimentalist mindset.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's the you. I'm convinced you can't force creativity. It's like it's like I think people who write books, I don't hardly think anybody's met a deadline. Um, you hear all these authors talking about, well, I was, 3 days before my deadline and I'd only got half of it done and all that sort of thing. Okay, there's a stimulation there, but it, it, the what am I trying to say? That I think it's harder to be creative if you're forced. Somebody externally is forcing you to say, come up with a solution. It's much easier if you're allowing the balance to find its way, and you kind of accept things, and then you know then you wake up in the morning having slept on it without stress maybe, and you have the answer, it seems, for example.
Yeah, totally. I agree. But what you say reminds me of an interview I watched. It's a French writer, Weber. He wrote about the ants. I don't know if it was I'm sure it was translated in English, but I don't know if you read it. He wrote many books. Anyway, he writes one book per year, and he said, like, in the interview, the guy seemed quite sensitive and quite, I don't know I don't know much about him, but he said he was very sensitive to music. He loved music, and I think he even played piano in his spare time. But he said that one day he decided he wanted to write, and in order to actually write and silence his inner critic or whatever, he decided to write every single morning at 8, from 8 to 12, every day, Saturday, Sunday, if it rains, if it snows, if it's sunny, whatever, on holidays, he writes every day from 8 to 12, bam, 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 bam. And he said that, of course, sometimes the writing is not good, but he doesn't care, it doesn't matter, he just writes every day. And at the
Yes.
end, he knows he will have a book. Some
Yeah.
books are not published because he thinks they're not ready yet or they're not so good, but he keeps writing anyway. And he kinds of, in this way, it's his priority, it gets it done, and he knows his creativity. He said that his creativity comes from this prediction, from this discipline.
Yeah. I think there's a container of some sort that helps to have, make it creative. I mean, I guess that he's probably got other rituals within that time, to set up or prepare, and and he knows he's trained himself to be within that space or in that kind of container for that, for that writing. And I think that's having that sort of discipline is a framework or a container that helps it. But I think as I said before, if it's a forced thing, then that becomes I think can be a bit of a problem.
Exactly. And that's I was going to say, for me, like, a part of me admires his discipline and his willpower and his dedication. I'm like, wow, it's that simple. So you just dedicate to it. You just say, okay, you commit to it and you just do it. And then everything will come from that. I think maybe. But then for me, given my personality, my energy, I know I could not. I would feel like I'm forcing myself. Just the idea of telling me, like, one part of me, it's like there are two parts. One part would say, oh, Reem, wouldn't it be amazing? Discipline, self-sacrifice, commitment to the art, the creativity, you would get so many things done. And then the other part would be like, okay, well, if you think that's what I should do. But then, of course, then when the moment arrives, I'm like, I don't want to do, like, today I don't want to write. Maybe today I want to play, or maybe today I want to paint, or maybe even I love painting and drawing. It's part of my work, but I don't want to do it every day. If I decide, if a part of me has decided you must do it every day, then the other part is like, well, I don't want
Yes.
anymore. I would play, I would draw, I would paint, I would write whenever I want to. Don't tell me what I have to do.
Yes, that's we have. I always think there's echoes of youth, isn't there? There's the there's this, don't tell me what to do, and and it wasn't my fault, or it's sort of the kind of classic phrases that we hear from our own childhood. No, it wasn't my fault, or stop telling me what to do.
Yeah, but isn't it? How can I say? We are like this still growing up. Like, usually we don't like people telling us what we should do. I mean, most of us, in a way, we like, because if someone was telling me you have to do this, you have to do that, okay, then I don't have to think, and I don't have to. In a way, it feels like we are being shouldered or helped or guided. So, okay, tell me what I have to do and I will do it. But on the other hand, it's like, well, sorry, I'm a free person. I'm a free woman. I'm a free man. I do what I want.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
and
part of
I
human
think that.
nature.
Yes, and it's kind of, when I had what I suppose people might call a proper job, it was in a way there were parts of that where, and I think I'm probably not alone in thinking this, is that your life in being told what to do means that you can absolve yourself of the responsibility of a lot of life. You can sort of, you don't have to face, those sort of hero's journey moments where you have to face the demons or whatever. You can avoid it by just doing what you're told, or you meet your quotas by, whatever it is on the production line or whatever. So it's a way of avoiding.
Yeah.
And then when you find yourself not having a job or some structure, then that becomes, for some people that's absolutely wonderful because they can, create huge either businesses or works of art or something in the community or whatever. And others, we can very easily just get completely lost, and really don't have any it can be quite depressing, I think. And I think in some way, although I've spent most of my life has been working on my own or in small groups in my own sort of enterprise, I still think without a structure of some sort, I can get quite depressed, and so depression has been a kind of theme that's gone on and off in my life as well. So I think there's pros and cons. If you can get out there and face the world on your own, and have the big fight, and very classic hero's journey type thing, or you can kind of get into a structure where you're being told what to do and you agree to be told what to do and you do it, and you avoid some major part of having a life in a way.
So what did you choose? Like, how did you choose? How did you find out what structure
Well,
worked well for you?
In short, I left school at 16 because I was getting very depressed, and it was actually a friend of mine pointed out the other day when we were discussing that. He says, "Well, actually, you might just have been bored," and I think there was a part of that to it. So I went and did an apprenticeship in an engineering factory, which was actually very good, but I did so that took 4 years, and then by the time I was 20, I was working in an office with some quite very interesting work to do, but there were 60 people in this office, and there were 2,500 people in the vicinity, in the company. And it just seemed to me that almost every week we'd all go up to the canteen, and somebody would get given a certificate or a watch or something, or say, "Oh, you've been here for 45 years, continuous service, and thanks very much. You're 65. Goodbye." And it struck me at the age of 20. Do I actually want to be here for 45 years, and then be given a handshake and a thank you very much, goodbye at the end of it? What's that about? And typically there's in the hero's journey, there's that call to adventure where you think, gosh, there's got to be more to life than this. And although I was quite well paid, I'd got some potentially a future there, although actually the company was wound up kind of 10 years later or whatever. And so I would have never have done 45 years there, but who knows what would have happened. So that was the moment where I thought, well, no, and the answer to your question is I then thought, okay, I could stay and get to 65, and then would I have wished that I had left and done something else and taken the risk? And when you're in your 20s, that's probably the time to take the most risk. Maybe not. I mean, and so I did. I thought, okay, I have to leave. Although then I managed to get a place at university, which I would not have done otherwise. And then, postgraduate type stuff. And then, I got a job after university, which was actually paid a lot less than I was getting. But that was another stepping stone to other things.
And then what happened?
Oh, and then what happened is I as part of the job that I had, which was I was an assistant to the sales manager of a packaging machinery company, and he sent me off to a client who really, he was actually, this client was the marketing director of a multinational, and he wanted a machine to go as part of a huge turnkey project they were creating for making a factory. And I talk to him about this little tiny machine and he seemed to be actually more interested in me than the machinery in a way of, what's your career? What are you going to be doing? What do you want to aspire to do? And then he said, oh, we also need some guidance on the packaging material for this. And I said, well, we don't, we're a machinery company. We don't, although I know the people that how to do this. And he said, oh, well, why don't you, you've said you want to sort of run your own business at some point just to see what it's like. Why don't you see if you can create a quotation for this? So I went back to my boss and I said, look, this guy's saying, he wants packaging material, are you interested in doing that? Or I'll do it kind of, as a thing that I'll do. And he said, no, we're not interested in that. You do that. So I did that. And he actually gave me, multiple orders. So that actually allowed me to leave and start my own thing. And then I'd always wanted to be a consultant. I thought, oh, this is because I part of my job at the aircraft component factory was being an investigator and solving problems. And I was attracted to that way of being. I was like, oh, how does that work? And interestingly, my MBTI is ISTP, which is an intuit,
I was just going to ask you about your MBTI.
Well, when my
Exactly, when
friend
you
who
said
was
investigator, I thought,
yeah, well, we're psychic. You see, I told you there's something going on that we don't know about. Anyway, but what she said was, oh, you're a ISTP. And I said, what does that mean? She said, well, the technical part is you're a intuit, a sensor, a thinker, a perceiver, whatever. But actually, I think ISTP says, I see the problem. And I went, oh, that means a lot more to me than all these other fancy words, because that's what I'm attracted to. I see a problem and I'm like a moth to a flame, sort of the engineering problems. How does that supposed to work? And I love that. And I was I think, looking back, very successful in figuring out what was going wrong and how to fix it and then getting it fixed. So it worked better. And I remember years later working I did about 18 months for an automotive component company who was not far from where I lived. And they had a particular bottleneck in a production line of these small components. And my boss said, well, would you like to have a look at that sometime? It wasn't, hey, you've got to solve this by Friday. It was have a look. So of course that was from my human design. That was perfect because that was the invitation. I'd respond to being invited, and hence I'm on this very call because it was an invitation. And so anyway, I looked at this situation and the problem, solved the problem, and we sort of put it in on the Sunday, and on the Monday morning it all went live on production. Now with production things, it's amazing because you have to be absolutely right, because the moment they break down, you lose production and you never get that time back, and it's just pure cost, and the accountants hate it and the management people hate it and everything. So anyway, I came into the office Monday morning, blah, 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 and they'd been working the shift since 6 a.m. or something. And one of the more belligerent guys, who was one of the sort of shift managers, came storming into the office and said, who made that? Who did that modification that's on the end of the line here with the robot and the guides and all the rest of it? And I went, oh, Harrison, well, I did. And he said, it's fantastic. It's great. It hasn't jammed up once in 3 hours. And that's it's great. We're all going to get our bonuses. And so that was really quite hilarious and funny. But it was also a great accolade that I felt really, I don't think I could have had a better accolade. I thought it was really, really nice to have it like that, because it's one thing for your boss going, oh yeah, did it work?
Really nice.
Yeah, okay, all right, fine, good, next. So I did like that, and I thought that was amusing.
Yeah, it's very gratifying to be seen and validated by other people we work with. When we fix
Yeah.
something, when we do something good, it's always a great thing.
Yes. Yeah. It is, and it's. I think we later on when I worked with some very senior women and coaching them, and one of the things that came up was that you can get to a certain level, and maybe this is any level, but for them, they got to a certain level very high up in the company, and there was nobody there that could appreciate the quality and the effort of their work. So they never got any appreciation. They never got any love. Never got any. All right, they had a huge bonus maybe, or colossal salary, but they were unhappy, and sometimes felt under attack even because the only time that anything if something went wrong, people would go, oh, whoa, you did that, you were wrong or whatever, but you never got any praise and accolade or encouragement for being right. And so what happens is, you move to another company, and for the first month or two, it's, oh great, it was so glad you're here, and it was, and then shortly after that, they're back in square one because the work they're doing is so high level that not many people completely understand it or can give feedback in a positive way. And then they're back in and wondering why they're unhappy again. But albeit they might have an even bigger pay package. But it's that the point is that you um, get to a point where we forget to offer our, I don't know, praise or our, well, I think the word is acknowledgement, isn't it? We forget to acknowledge people for what they do, you know, and it's kind of, it isn't about, well, that's your job, you're paid to do it, get on with it. It's, hey, I was really, what you did there was really, I found out, well, I could never have done that. That was just amazing. Or some sort of um, recognition. And I think that could make a huge difference in relationships and in teams and in leadership and in companies just by doing that. And I remember
Definitely, I
I
agree
I
with
had a
you.
I had a part-time job in a well-known hardware company for about 6 weeks at some point, and somebody had come to ask me about how many tiles they needed for this job, and I worked it out for them and helped them buy these tiles. We used to have these sort of Monday morning meetings in the sort of 7 o'clock before the store opened, and we had this huddle. And the manager said, "And we've got a mention for Geoff. Yeah, we've got a letter saying thanks very much. Geoff was great. He helped sort of figuring out how many tiles to put on my bathroom." And so Geoff stepped forward and they gave me a little badge and a £10 voucher. And, even that, just that little record, that was really visceral. And I thought, wow, that's even, I mean, it didn't cost the company anything really. I mean, 10 quid, so what? But the level of like, oh, I feel recognized and part of the team, and, it's encouraged. Absolutely, little things like that. I remember, and it is amazing. And I think, you know, as senior managers I meet, sometimes that doesn't happen enough. Even that little bit of recognition.
I think this ties up very well with what we were saying before, how highly sensitive people tend to be all about contribution and making the most of everyone's skills and talents. Like they usually like, of course, HSPs who are not, can I say, who don't feel good in their skin or who have worth issues, they might not, they might deny this in themselves. They might deny their inner kindness, and but when you are healthy, let's say, HSP who is healthy usually would thrive in and would naturally give compliments to others around them. Whereas I'm not saying other people are mean, not at all. But let's say this is even more particularly amongst HSPs. So what did I want to say about that? Oh yeah, that it just ties in with what you were saying. That you picked up on this, you noticed this. I think some people are even not paying attention to this kind of things. Of course, they benefit from it as well. They are human beings, but they may not pay attention, or they may not. There is a fly, but they may not even think about it. So that's why I think HSP, it's really important for HSPs to value that about them, their capacity of seeing the good in people, and use it to their advantage, but also use it for the advantage. It's actually the advantage for everyone around them, around us. It's not because other people don't do it. It's not because other people don't think about it that they don't benefit from it.
Yeah, and that it's sort of the opposite of what this guy told me when I was. Well, it's the opposite of what this guy was telling me when I was 20 about he was going to get the other person first, you know.
Exactly. I wanted to bounce back on something else you said about validation. How, like, these women who were working with you, they felt really unhappy when because they were not validated, because there was no one like above them, because they were doing very high level work. I think this happens a lot, even not when in a high level position. It certainly happened for me in my career. I never had, I don't know if it's fashion or creative industry in general. I think from my experience, I may be wrong, but from what I observed, I found the engineering industry kinder than the creative industry. Somehow it's funny because, you know, this cliche of how we think, oh, women are usually naturally kinder, you know, the feminine energy. And usually, I say usually, it's not always like that, but, you know, engineering is supposed to be more male dominated industry, whereas creative industry, artistic industry, fashion industry is supposed to be more female dominated. So one could imagine that in a more female dominated, there will be more kindness and softness, but it's actually not my experience at all. I found it's people are very tough and very not generous at all with compliments at all. It's each for their own. You have to do you have to do your thing. You have to work really hard. It's like you always have. It's this feeling of you always have to prove yourself, and, like, you know, it's like everyone is fighting for their place, or for their place in under the sun, something like that. Because a big scarcity mindset. There is not room for everyone. So I struggled to get here, so I'm gonna make everyone struggle around me. It's a kind of
well, it's a sort of vicious competition born out of jealousy and fear, or combinations of those, I think. So and it's not
an inflated ego as well.
That's right. That all comes into it. And the way it occurred to me, I mean, I've got sort of two books in me. One is about the leadership thing. One is about my experience with what I learned over 25 years or so of coaching with women, and also what came out of visiting and living in the jungle in Costa Rica, where I think what happens is, or the one way of looking at it, as I'm talking about, might be in a book, is that we look at the sort of masculine, feminine, male, feel. Well, first of all, masculine and feminine isn't man and woman, because we're a mix, kind of on a
definitely not
on a continuum.
Definitely not.
Then Then we want to describe, you know, what this continuum is, and it's really difficult. Except that one way to look at the thing where you've got to change your things is to say, well, what happens if you're right at this end off the screen at 100% masculine, and what happens at this end where it's 100% feminine? So it's a long story how I got to all of this, and met people and gurus and all sorts. But ultimately, I'm standing in the middle of the jungle and realizing that jungle kind of represents what might happen at 100% feminine, where you've got massive creativity. It's everything's supporting each other. You've got this turnover of life and death and decay and regrowth, and this sort of magic that happens. I mean, for example, there was this vine creeper that came down from, I couldn't see how, it looked hundreds of feet up in these huge tall trees, and it came right down, and it was kind of the thickness of my thumb. And when it got to about the height of my knee, it was starting to sprout roots. And I thought, well, how does it know? I mean, it's grown all the way down, and it gets to about a couple of feet from the ground, and it's knowing to start to sprout these roots. How does it know that? So there's this kind of wisdom. Now, that might offend or upset some men, but remember, men isn't this masculine, and masculine isn't this the men, and the feminine isn't feminine. It's just an arbitrary thing we call this energy. But the point is, if you say, oh, okay, 100% masculine is complete sterility, and the 100% feminine is creativity on a massive scale. The next difficult question you have from that is, okay, if the feminine is responsible for creating, how did the masculine get there? Well, the answer might be the feminine created it. So if the feminine created the masculine, well, why? And then that becomes a really interesting kind of debate. And I think
hold on. Then it would mean that Adam was born from Eve, out of Eve, not the opposite.
well, yeah, but actually, then you've got there is this what's her name, Lilith? Is it Lilith or something? There's some biblical part of actually Lilith came first anyway. Lilith, yeah. I don't know. I don't entirely know the story, but somebody did say, oh, yeah, actually, they did say that. And they were, but you have to do a lot of reading around that character because it's been maligned and all sorts of things, However, I think, the biblical, if you're into religion, the Bible, there is a bit about what came before Adam and Eve. But what the question is, if the feminine is, I mean, all right, you can say God created the feminine, fair enough. And then out of the feminine came the masculine. So why would the feminine go to all that trouble to create the masculine? And the answer might be, whereas the feminine is kind of very supportive and all over the place here, to grow out and to expand into the universe, to take that energy out there and that creativity, you need a little bit of direction and a little bit of this kind of action and focus, if you like, a little bit like your guy who writes for 4 hours. Go ahead.
Yeah, a bit of structure.
There's a little structure, yeah. So why would the feminine want this structure? Well, it's to support the feminine in creating this wonderful stuff that the feminine can create. Well, for the last 1,000 years or so, the masculine has got a little bit more, more pushy and sees itself as the feminine is supporting the masculine. Whereas, I think if you turned it on its head and said, okay, as somebody whose preference is embodying more of the masculine, what is my job? Well, that might be, and that answer is to actually support the feminine. Well, that means, okay, yes, supporting women, which is what I do anyway through the coaching work, but it's actually supporting the feminine out of that. And when you say in your industry, where in the fashion industry it's very backbiting and backstabbing and all this stuff going on, that is what I say is where you need the masculine energy to come in and remind or support the pure creative side, and that what am I saying? It helps to pull everyone together to get the best for the team as well as the individual, rather than the going in the direction that this guy said when I was 20 about, doing other people down first. I mean, the reason partly why people do people down is because they think they're getting one up and they're putting themselves above, whereas we're really talking about an equal partnership, bringing each individual's talents to bear in a way that's mutually beneficial to everyone, or as much as possible. I mean, obviously, they're going to be stars who have, if they're then helped in the right way, they can contribute to society, and all right, they might become rich as well themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the benefit rather than the expense of everyone else. So I think that's how, in short, and you can edit this to make it shorter if you like, the masculine. If you said, well, the masculine's job is actually to support the feminine in this creative endeavor, rather than the masculine taking the feminine as the servant of the masculine, and sort of getting ourselves down 1,000 years of wars and distress. That would be an interesting debate and a way of looking at it, I think.
Yes, it's very interesting. I think also in our societies, fashion industry included, I think the notion of feminine energy and male energy have been dysregulated, and the image that comes to me is, I don't know why I had this image coming to my face. It's like when a muscle, how do you say atrophy in English? When a muscle is
Atrophies or stiffens up.
sorry.
Atrophies.
Do you say atrophied in English?
Becomes like stone. Is that
Something like
the
that.
word?
I don't know why I had this image. Yeah. When the muscle cannot grow properly, and it's so at the end the muscle becomes like. And I felt like the feminine and male energy, masculine energy, have been atrophied, and because we don't really know anymore. Like we're supposed to win. Like women and men are out of touch with their feminine side,
Yeah.
but also kind of out of touch with their male side, but the healthy version. Because like I think, like for same as way as for any energy, it's like a spectrum. So as you said, the jungle, the two fast, like there's the extreme masculine and the extreme feminine. But like, so within the feminine, imagine there's the extreme, and if you like, there's the shadow part of the feminine energy and the bright light, the golden part of it. The same for the masculine. And when we deny the bright part of each energy, we are left with the shadow part. And even if we try to, but we don't really know it. It's like instead of nourishing the muscle
Yes.
healthily, it becomes, that's why I say it's becoming atrophied, because it cannot
Yeah.
grow healthily, and therefore
Yeah.
everything is out of whack. And
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, as I say, if the feminine tries to become very masculine, the end result is sterility, and everything just dies. But what I think, you can imagine this line, and as if there's a sort of sweet spot somewhere in the middle that everything works nicely and you get a balance. Well, or when you need to have a bit more action, you move a bit more to the masculine. You need a bit more creative, you move a bit more to the feminine, or whatever metric you use. But if you push the feminine too far forward and make them, and I think this is what happens when we're making women into managers or into bosses, and they're expected to work in a very masculine way. What happens is they sort of they can never reach the masculine end, and they wouldn't want to, but they're sort of pushed off and into an abyss. And I think that's why we hear that women bosses get referred to very in derogatory terms for doing exactly the same thing that a man would do, and he'd be called some sort of really tough guy. And it just seems to be, well, that was the same action, but the woman gets called something derogatory, and the man gets oh, he was a tough guy. Well, there's so what we're saying is a slightly different way of a woman to be assertive and confident and get things done. There's a slightly different way of doing it to what the sort of the tough guy man would be. And anyway, when we really look at what the tough guy is, he's really just a scared kid. It's
that's true. That's true. But that being said, we are highly sensitive people here, so I think we're not that impressed with tough guys.
Well, exactly.
It's not a way of. I'm not saying HSP are feminine, no, not at all. But somehow the sensitivity trait relates more to the feminine energy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Um,
And what
but
I'm saying is
so
there's a
actually,
huge
this,
power in
yeah,
that. You know, there's a huge power in that, and um, it's if we knew how to leverage it or to work with it, I think there's well, as I say, you've got to the next kind of logical step from this argument I have is that if we get too masculine, we carry on masculine, then basically the whole world is going to become a nuclear wasteland. It's going to be sterile. Would destroy the whole thing. So, as I think the feminine power needs to come back into the fore, and with the the sensitivity that's required with that as well. And I think that's going to
that's
save the world.
interesting.
Or more accurately, those the sensitives that can embody and leverage the feminine wisdom in a way that
Yeah.
suddenly people go, oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Elaine Aron, this doctor I talked to you about, the one who coined the term HSP, she argues in her books and her work, she said that why the highly sensitive person trait evolved in our species. Actually, it's not only human beings who have highly sensitive people. It's also like there was a study about monkeys, for example. Like what I mean is other animals also have
Yeah,
HSP
yeah,
who
yeah,
have a more sensitive nervous system. So there is a reason why it's because humans or animals need they need this part of the population that is more into taking risks without thinking too much, like brave, one kind of bravery, because there are different styles, but we're more into the action mode. I go and I do kind of the male energy, but then there is we need those people who are a bit more on the side, who are more observant, who are more compassionate, who pay attention to details, who are more in touch with their intuition, who will be like the sacred advisors. She said, like in ancient times, there would be the king and the warriors, and then there would be the sacred advisor. She said the sacred advisor is the HSP, is the highly sensitive person,
yes,
kind of like the mage, the wizard energy, who is a bit more, who is very brave, but in a different way,
yeah,
in a more less obvious way. Let's say it's more subtle.
yeah,
So that would be the role of the HSP, that needs to lead the king and the warriors into safer zones, and
yeah,
to highlight danger, like hey, you didn't pay attention to this, but if you keep doing this way, it's going to burn down, or it's going to explode.
yeah,
Careful, pay attention to
yeah.
this and this and that. Men, I think it's this feminine energy also. So it could be, I find, like in the big scale, it could be that we need more HSP showing up, speaking up,
Well,
more women as well, for sure. But
yeah, I
also,
mean,
what I mean is also within an individual, if everyone is more in touch with the feminine side, feminine energy, or the sensitivity, let's say sensitivity, even so, then things will get much better.
yeah, yeah, and I think it becomes, I think with the more masculine the energy, the more you might say, well, it's more impactful, but I think it's also short term. So so you might say, well, I'm going to get this result and I'm going to drive it through and I'm going to do it and then I'm going to get my accolade. Thank you very much. Whereas with the sensitive, we're saying that, hang on, okay, you can do that, but actually that's a short term. If you want an actually longer term and more sustainable result, then you just look at it from this point of view. And I think that's possibly, we complain, don't we, that the world is getting faster and faster and quicker, and with, AI is now upon us. Where is the sensitivity in a chat GBT report that you've asked it to do? I don't know. I must admit I haven't really embraced the whole thing just yet, but I suspect it will be more of a the sort of more masculine, yeah, it's faster. I can get a whole report done in 3.2 seconds that would have taken me 3 days or whatever. But what would be the longer term leverage that I can get out of that? All right, give me more time to do other things, or does it give me more time to get embroiled in more of the same, to get even faster? I don't know. I mean, where does the quality of life come from?
I think the ChatGPT could be used as a tool to serve the most sensitivity or the intuition or like the human mind, the thing that only humans can bring, like only actual people can bring to the table, and not the other way around. If it's then it's fine. It could be used as a creative tool or as a practical tool in order to enhance our creativity. If we know why, like if we stay aligned with why we're doing it, if we don't forget why, then it's fine. So I think even with that, we need to balance out the feminine and masculine energy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think the point is also to be aware of that kind of continuum. And when you're looking at things, say, okay, all right, where is that coming from? That action, is it a pandemonium of uncontrolled massive creativity, or is it this very very direct high energy thing at the far end, which could that is that going to serve the feminine, or is it going to get more into sterility? Where so it's just useful looking at things through different lenses, I think.
It is. And it's interesting, like this notion of sterility and jungle. Sometimes, like personally, I think I'm quite creative, but I'm also very chaotic in my mind when I'm not paying attention. I think this is something I've found amongst many HSPs, because we do have a tendency to overthinking, to have a lot of ideas, as we discussed before, like before recording, we say we both have this notion of ideas growing like branch of a trees. It's not linear thinking, and in a way it's exciting and it's great because there's an abundance of ideas, of inspiration, of possibilities. But it can also lead to an overgrown jungle, and the jungle, when it's too overgrown, it can destroy. And it can become so chaotic within that actually we don't have the energy all the time or the space to give life to those ideas.
Yeah,
And at the end, we're not creating anything. It becomes a big mess.
that's right.
And it's like
Exactly. And
and we become overwhelmed. Our nervous system gets overwhelmed, and
yeah.
then we're like shut down.
Well, and that's my point about that's when the masculine energy of the slightly more directive comes in, so that it says, okay, well, and that's why my argument is the masculine was created by the feminine to help with exactly that situation where your creativity is just becoming, just overwhelming. You say, okay, all right, okay, great, it's good, but actually then to grow that out, further out into the world and apply it, or to be able to cope with it, or just go to the next level of creation, whatever it is, you need to have created that system or that structure, which is much more in the masculine energy, to get out of that. But and that's so. I think you kind of argued my point for me. Thank you.
That's exactly this. I totally agree with you. I think it's really important. And since we are sensitive and creative people, we do struggle with that. Particularly struggle with that within ourselves, not only in the collective.
Yeah, there's from working with women in well, all sorts, but in senior places and in business as well. It occurred to me that there was a particular communication that the feminine could make and one that the masculine would make. So the masculine might be, in this sort of get things done. So you could imagine it being more commanding and say, okay, we've got to do this, let's organize and let's do it. Whereas what I found was with the women that I coached, if they went and said, how could I support you to do what's required, which is a different energy. So, and in fact, one of my several of my clients use this to great effect. Or somebody got a huge pay rise, helping her boss by going and saying, "How can I support you?" And another woman actually completely busted her sales target by using that approach with her customers. So, whereas the traditional business structure is a kind of a pyramid that way, and you've got the managing director, and then you've got layers underneath, and there's command and control. If you invert that, and I'm not the first person to invert this particular kind of triangle, then you've got a supportive thing. So the managing director is worth his or her money because he's supporting the whole enterprise, and this is where coaching comes in as well as a sort of prop, because it's it might be a bit wobbly. But the question is how can I support you? And then they say, how can I support you? And then how can I support you? And then you get to the front line of the people who are dealing with customers. And if they've got their masculine hat on, it's, hey, buy this, and this is a great, the benefits of this and the cost is that, and your payback is so and so, blah, 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 blah. But if you then say, hey, how could I support you? Where do you need to be supportive? And some of it can be as much as, well, I need to look good. Who do you need to look good to? I need to look good to my wife, my boss, my peers, whatever it is. Okay, how do we do that? And so my clients, my sales clients' conversation was really about how, what do you need to look good to? I need to look good to my boss. How do we do that? So she was doing that. And as a consequence, and making sure she delivered on helping them look good. And so she actually got massive number of more orders because she could do that. But the other thing is if you're a corporate and you've got this structure now, which is fairly easy to put in, and it's obviously, how can I support you? But I'm not being a doormat, so I'm not doing your work for you, but I'll make sure that what you need is in place. And how do you get to what do you need to feel good and look good? But when you take that to the sort of outside world, then you say that to your suppliers. What do you need? Now, I know that the automotive industry, from having worked in it, is completely the opposite of that. It's really, they treat their suppliers as, they have to perform, they have to do this. It's really very masculine. But it's, what do you need? So you get your suppliers, then you get the community. You can go out into the community and the environment and say, well, what do you need? And then, so you get your CSR, your corporate social responsibility, as a natural. Your suppliers love you and go the extra mile. And I used to do that with, not realizing what I was doing to my suppliers. And when I had a rush job on, one of the engineering companies said, and I'll probably get shot for this, but they're saying, we've got a huge rush job for Mars, for their huge Mars bar plant in Slough. But actually, and you're a tiny company, but because you pay us on time and we really enjoy working with you because you come in and you talk about what we want and everything, and we're interested in us, we'll actually put their work off to one side and we'll do yours. Well, so it kind of does pay. Yes. Embodying that feminine way right through a company, and just by looking at it in a sort of upside down way, you end up getting, serving. And when I presented this to an exec at a huge aircraft company once, and I said, what's really interesting here is this big cloud of money at the top. And it's like a rain cloud. And when you're serving everybody like this, the rain cloud of money falls into your company, and they love that bit. And it's actually kind of true in a way. So the masculine gets served by serving the feminine, and it's a virtuous cycle. And that's what I wanted to say about that concept.
That's so interesting. Yes, I listened to a podcast recently. I think it's a podcast about manifestation. And the woman she was saying that money is masculine energy, but that in order to have more money in your life, like to receive more money, you need to turn on your feminine energy, because it's the idea of being receptive to the masculine energy of money. So if you're being more feminine about it, embodying the feminine energy, then you can, it's like you open the gates, you open the doors to receiving more. The energy of money, because it's masculine, it will be naturally attracted to this feminine energy and
Yes.
comes to you. But that's very
Let
interesting. She
let's
compared
hope.
to
Let's hope. I think it's true. I, I think that is true. I mean,
she compared
the
it to a yeah, she compared it to a dating situation. She said, like, it's quite basic, but sometimes simple comparisons are easier to understand. She says, so imagine a woman and a man, like a a manly man dates and a woman dates. And if the woman asks the man to do something for her, like, the man would be really happy because the man naturally wants to serve the woman. It's energy. You don't need to, let's take it as
yeah
with a pinch of salt. But anyway, the idea is, and then the woman is, so then the woman would say, okay, thanks. She would say thank you, like being appreciative, but she needs to back off. She needs to let the man do his things. He's gonna do it. He says he's gonna serve the woman. She's gonna do what she needs, but he's gonna have to do it his own way. She
yeah
cannot, like, if the woman steps in and try to manipulate the man in doing the thing the way she wants, he's
yes
gonna feel controlled
yes
and he's not gonna like it, and then he's gonna say, well, I'm not gonna do it anymore. You're annoying me, like, back
yeah
off.
yeah
Like, trust
exactly
me, I'll do it my way. I will handle it my way.
yeah
And,
and,
she
and
was comparing this to this notion of receiving money.
yeah, well, that's right, and in that particular example, if that was to carry on, then the ultimate result of that relationship would be sterility, and wouldn't exist anymore. So that is important, but it's also important for the masculine to allow himself or itself to go into that serve the feminine mode, I think. And if more men tried that, and more women realised that was the way it works, I think happiness would be self-generating.
Definitely. And how would you,
Yeah.
like, what advice would you have for people, for highly sensitive and creative people, to balance out their negative and feminine energy within themselves,
Oh well,
within the one person?
I think that with the majority of things start off at a baseline of awareness, and in a way that leads us neatly into the IDKN leadership model, which we maybe talk about another time now. But the point is, you first is awareness, and you are awareness, have an awareness of your reaction and your emotional response, and then it's a question of when we're doing IDK and show you how to get out of reaction, which we call the mud, into an area of response, which is actually much more measured and controlled and planned and reasoned. It's not easy, and there's a huge amount of hero's journey in that as well. But if you don't, you will go into reaction. You'll try and resolve the tension of that emotion that you're experiencing, whether it's fear or anger or a sort of depression thing or cyclical. You'll resolve that, and then you'll create another moment fairly quickly, or not, but you will create another moment where you get into reaction again, and then another one and another one. So you're permanently in reaction, and we say in our model of the IDKN that you're in the mud, but then pretty soon, if you keep on trying to resolve these things out of reaction, you get into a swamp. The mud becomes a swamp, and we have an acronym for that, which is SWAMP, swamp, which stands for stuck with a massive problem. And getting out of that is a lot harder. So that's a sort of neat segue into perhaps what I'd be delighted to talk to you about that another time.
Definitely love to have a conversation about the I don't know-ness
Yes.
model. I think it's very interesting and very relatable for many sensitive people. Yes, so can you give some example of how you personally balance out the masculine energy and the feminine energy within?
Ooh. Well, that's a great question. I think obviously having an awareness and having worked with this sort of thing for quite a long time, but I mean, I think the first thing is to accept who we are anyway. We might be naturally very masculine, we might be naturally very feminine, and trying to bend that, into to others' will or is maybe a mistake. Much better to find some way of leveraging our own talents. But I did catch myself the other day. I'd, we, 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 we have a local an amenity where tip where we can dump household goods or whatever. That was no longer required, so you have to book to go down there. And in our particular local one, they're very good and they keep it clean, but there's a couple of guys there who seem to be very officious. And I drove the car down there, and I was in a bit of a hurry, and I drew up and reversed into a parking spot. Now, beside me, there was a big truck and a trailer which was taking up kind of 1.5 spaces. So I moved over into part of the half that wasn't being used, thinking, oh, you leave room for someone else. But there were sort of yellow lines down marking rough areas of bays in which you can put your car. So my wheels were just over the edge of this yellow line. Now I jumped out of the car in a bit of a rush, and this operative there came up and said, "No, sorry, sir. Sir, would you move your car into the bay properly?" And I thought, well, I found myself straight away in reaction, thinking, well, hang on, I'm in a hurry. It's completely pointless. There's no need, I'm actually making more room for somebody else. I mean, I kind of thought about this, and now you're making me wrong. And I actually felt myself, and I don't naturally get angry, I don't think. I mean, maybe I do, but it's not expressed. And I was about to express my feelings about that because it was a waste of time. It's just being petty, pedantic, officious, bullying. It's all those things which I hate. And I felt I can feel it now, like tension, chest tensing, and So, and then I caught myself, and I thought, that's all that's going to do is we're just going to get into an argument. We're going to get shouty, and then if we didn't stop and back down, we get into a fight, and then we'd all go to court, and then we'll go to prison, and it was just like completely. It would just blow up, And this is in how wars start ultimately, and then so I thought, okay. I still had the emotion of anger, but instead of resolving it in an argument and just saying, no, I'm not doing that, and I was going back in the car. It took me like 6 seconds to move the car and get out, and but I also felt that as I drove away, I was still holding that anger, and it took a while but I know the point was I was realizing and noticing that at the same time, so there was an awareness, and although you can't deny humanity and these emotions you're going to have. It's how you choose to resolve it. And as I was putting the bags back in, having emptied them, the guy said, "Oh, thanks very much for moving the car, sir." And even then I couldn't look him in the eye. I could have been magnanimous and saying that's quite all right, but actually there probably wasn't a need to do it in the first place, maybe. But my other we all have our go-to methods of dealing with things, and my tendency go-to is to go aloof, which means to leave the situation, because being sensitive, probably can't handle the potential angst of getting into a big energetic argument. It's just like, it's not worth my investment in my energy to do that. So you go away. The cost of it is, of course, you carry that with you, through the day or from how long. So I drove up this lane. Luckily, it's about a mile long where there's no traffic, and I just stopped, and then I just went into a breathing. Just okay, just calm down. just breathe it out and let it go. And, I think there is, and I need to, for myself, note to Geoff, learn more about these breathing techniques, because I do think there is a power in them, and there's a physiological effect that breathing has, and the different types of breaths that you can make. So really, the first thing is notice, be aware, reflect, be courageous. There's always that. Then there's a sort of reframe about, okay, who was I in that moment? How do I deal with it? And if you get really quick at doing that all in one go while it's live, then you can be in response, which is a much better way of coming at getting to the end result that you really want. The end result I wanted was to get rid of this junk and get back in the car and get back onto a meeting in time. That's what I wanted. And had I gone any other way, I might have been late for my meeting, because I might have ended up with a black eye or something. It's not the end result that we really want, and I would have been in the swamp, stuck with a massive problem. So I think that's
so it's a great example. Thank you. So you were aware, you took awareness, you observed your reactions, what was going on within you, and you took the time off to be with yourself, to process your emotion, and then you nurtured yourself by thinking about breathing and
but it's
breathing. Breath is life. It's life force, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a painful exercise, but actually, if you, as a sensitive person, if you can realize what's going on and then have a strategy for dealing with it, and without being a doormat and without being bullied, or to rise above that occasion and situation, don't get dragged back down into the mud. And who knows why that person asked me to do that. To me, it seemed like completely, futile and just purely a trying to exert their own dominance, and maybe that's all they had. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they're bullied themselves. Who knows? I don't know what their situation is, but I'm pretty sure.
Maybe they don't nurture themselves.
Well,
maybe they deny their feminine energy.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, and maybe they're a prime candidate for a bit of coaching about, okay, what's going on for you, and what effect do you think that's going to have, and what result is that, doing this sort of thing they're going to have, and who knows? You don't know. But the point is, well, how do we deal with it internally ourselves? How do without becoming burned out or stressed out or distracted or whatever? And I think it's also about practice and getting support. Again, I've shared that story a couple of times with people who are coaches, and we've talked about it and all that sort of stuff.
It was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed talking about this, the feminine and masculine energy. There's so much to say about that. We started talking about balance, and here we are at the end, getting back to balancing energies.
Yes, that's been great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I mean, I very much enjoyed having this kind of creative conversation.
Yeah, a flow. We followed the flow.
Yes.
Tell me, where people can find out more about you, and how can they work with you? Like, what can you help them with?
Yeah, no, great question. Well, that's the sort of two main things that I do. One is coaching, mostly women as it happens, and that's, you'll find some information on a very ancient and unloved website. Well, not unloved, but it's kind of hasn't been updated for years. At geoffhinsley.com, and the more sort of leadership type thing is at IDKN. That stands for I Don't Know Ness.org. So that's idkn.org. Welcome to have a look at both of those sites. And the way I work, I work largely one-to-one, and have sessions. Always have an introductory session to get to know one another first of all. So always just send me an email at Geoff@geoffhinsley or Geoff@idkn.org. So Geoff@geoffhinsley.com or Geoff@idkn.org.
I will
Thank you.
write all the information in the show notes, so
All
don't
right,
worry
fabulous. Yes,
about
I
the
knew there was
spelling. Yeah.
I knew there was an easy solution. So yes, welcome to
With a clickable link.
Yes, fabulous. God, the technology is wonderful. So I'd be delighted to have a conversation about where people are, where they'd like to get to, how to really. And this IGKN leadership thing is a very new or novel leadership practice, which will, I think, blow your socks off. And really, even if you've been leading for 20 years or more, it's absolutely. Well, we'll talk about it next time. Let's say that.
Yes, we'll definitely have a conversation about that, because that's a very interesting topic, and we've all been there, and I will be again.
Yes,
As leaders, as like the company leaders, but I think as leaders of our own lives as well,
absolutely.
especially in the creative field, because
Indeed.
creativity is also all about embracing uncertainty, and treasures lie
Absolutely.
there.
Fabulous. Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed, and see you next time for our next conversation.
Yes. Fantastic. I shall look forward to it. Okay. Bye, Rim. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this conversation too. I wanted to recap here Geoff's process to balance out masculine and feminine energy while dealing with a triggering situation. So here it goes. Step 1, awareness and self-observation. Be courageous. Step 2, taking time off to be with yourself and your emotions. This will require courage as well if you are not used to take time for yourself and to tune in. Then step 3 is nurture yourself. Step 4 is breathe slowly and deeply. Step 5, reframe the situation. Step 6, focus on the desire and result. And 7, respond to the situation with grace. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if it has inspired you, please share it around you. Also, if you feel called to it, please subscribe to the podcast and leave me a review. It really helps to spread the word out. All your questions are welcome. You can send them to me on Instagram at rim.creativeenergy.com or email me via my website rimcreativeenergy.com, and don't worry, I'll share in the show notes exactly where to find me. Until next time, sending you loving creative energy.